The B-29, a superfortress with cutting-edge technology, carrying a crew whose resolve was as unyielding as the steel under their feet. High above the chaos of World War II, the B-29 Superfortress ruled the skies, a flying marvel armed with devastation. Crews faced deadly missions, mechanical flaws, and the lingering psychological trauma of carrying out destruction on an unimaginable scale. Welcome to Historical Digs, where we dig out the secrets from the annals of history. The B-29, a superfortress. At the brink of World War II, the United States embarked on a daring project that redefined aerial warfare forever. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress, a calculated gamble that surpassed the Manhattan Project in both cost and complexity. On February 5, 1940, the U.S. Army Air Corps called for a hemisphere defense weapon with the following specifications: a super bomber with a remarkable speed of 400 miles per hour, transporting 1 ton of bombs over a distance of 5,333 miles, and an impressive bomb capacity of 16,000 pounds. B-29 elevated the limits of military aviation, with over 1,000 aircraft ordered even before its first flight on September 21, 1942, with Eddie Allen at the controls. Factories emerged nationwide, stretching from Wichita, Kansas to Marietta, Georgia, giving rise to a powerful industrial force to satisfy growing demand. An enormous training program prepared thousands of crew members to operate this technological marvel. The B-29 boasted pressurized cabins, state-of-the-art radar systems, and a groundbreaking computerized fire control system for its remote-controlled gun turrets. Its 11-member crew operated these systems at high altitudes, making it a technological masterpiece. The B-29's sleek design and 4 powerful R-3350's duplex Cyclone engines generated 8,800 horsepower, enabling it to carry up to 20,000 pounds or 9,100 kilograms of bombs. Despite these advancements, the bomber's development was fraught with setbacks. For $3 billion, or equivalent to $51 billion today, it was the most expensive wartime project, a gamble that demanded nothing less than perfection. The first nuclear strike. The B-29 played a pivotal role in the United States' strategy in the Pacific Theater. However, its operation from airfields in China and India posed significant logistical challenges, as fuel and munitions had to be transported over the treacherous Himalayas. A breakthrough occurred at the remote Mariana Islands, where U.S. Marines had engaged in fierce battles to secure vital airstrips. This location not only brought U.S. aircraft closer to Japan, but also established a direct supply route from the United States via sea. On November 24, 1944, the first ever bombing of Tokyo took place since the Doolittle raid in 1942. B-29 bombers targeted an aircraft manufacturing facility on the city's outskirts. The extensive bombing campaign conducted by the United States played a crucial role in compelling the Japanese government to surrender in August 1945. These airstrikes aimed to cripple Japan's war-making capabilities and undermine the resolve of its citizens. Despite the continuation of high-altitude bombing missions into early 1945, the results were disappointing due to frequent mechanical issues and the unanticipated strong winds, known as jet streams, that hindered precision targeting. Faced with these challenges, U.S. military planners turned to a different tactic: incendiary bombing. under General Curtis LeMay's command, a strategy of low-altitude nighttime firebombing was implemented to cripple Japan's industrial capabilities. This approach was fraught with controversy, as most Japanese homes were made of flammable materials like wood and bamboo, leading to significant civilian casualties. Nevertheless, with the B-29's effectiveness still in question and mounting pressure to deliver a decisive blow to Japan, the strategy was deemed necessary. The bombers were modified to carry M69 incendiary bombs and, in some instances, napalm, sacrificing their defensive armaments. The peak of this firebombing campaign occurred on the night of March 9th to 10th, 1945, when 279 B-29s unleashed a devastating firestorm on Tokyo.
That was a terrible night, March 10th. And I don't know how I lived, but you could feel the heat, and I heard people screaming, probably mothers and children trying to get into the boat. I was right across from the Emperor's Palace, and they were trying to get into the water to avoid the heat.
The incendiary attacks had a catastrophic impact on Japan, yet the conflict continued unabated. Allied strategists concluded that the only way to achieve an unconditional surrender from Japan was to deploy a groundbreaking weapon, the atomic bomb. By 1943, it was determined that the B-29 was the sole aircraft in the U.S. arsenal capable of executing this mission, even though it was still under development. Significant modifications were implemented to enable the B-29s to carry and deploy the bomb while withstanding the ensuing shockwave and radiation. These specially adapted B-29s became known as the Silver Plate Fleet, named after the project's codename. On August 6, 1945, a B-29 called Enola Gay and piloted by Paul Tibbets departed from the Marianas at 2:45 a.m., dropping an atomic bomb known as Little Boy at 8:15 a.m. on Hiroshima. This uranium-based bomb detonated with a force equivalent to approximately 13 kilotons. At the time, the city housed around 280 to 290,000 civilians alongside 43,000 military personnel. In the aftermath, estimates suggest that between 90,000 and 166,000 individuals perished within 4 months, with the U.S. Department of Energy later estimating over 200,000 fatalities within 5 years due to the bomb's devastating effects. Hiroshima's figures indicate that 237,000 people suffered death or severe health consequences from burns, radiation sickness, and cancer. Tibbets recalled, "We turned back to look at Hiroshima. The city was hidden by that awful cloud, boiling up, mushrooming, terrible, and incredibly tall. No one spoke for a moment, then everyone was talking. I remember Lewis pounding my shoulder saying, 'Look at that, look at that, look at that.' Tom Farabee wondered about whether radioactivity would make us all sterile. Lewis said he could taste atomic fission. He said it tasted like lead." Second nuclear strike. After the first atomic bomb strike of World War II, the second nuclear strike set a chilling narrative that changed the course of history. Just 3 days after Enola Gay's successful bombing of Hiroshima, Major Charles W. Sweeney took command of Boxcar, a B-29 Superfortress tasked with delivering the more powerful nuclear bomb, Fat Man, on Kokura. However, the mission quickly went wrong due to a series of mechanical failures and critical errors. Before takeoff, a malfunction trapped 600 gallons of fuel in a rear tank, leaving the aircraft underprepared. As Boxcar approached Kokura, worsening weather conditions and alarming signals from Fat Man's fusing system raised the stakes, with crew member Phil Barnes narrowly averting a premature detonation. When the backup aircraft failed to rendezvous, Sweeney pressed on, now significantly delayed and low on fuel. Upon arrival, Kokura was obscured by clouds and defended by enemy fighters, forcing a diversion to Nagasaki. With fuel running dangerously low, Sweeney faced the daunting choice of radar bombing, but was ultimately granted a brief window of visibility. At 11:01 a.m., Fat Man was released over Nagasaki. The crew's ordeal continued as they had to navigate a perilous route to Okinawa for an emergency landing, with 3 engines failing due to fuel starvation. Remarkably, Boxcar touched down with just 7 gallons of fuel left, concluding a mission on the brink of disaster. The terrifying losses. Between November 24, 1944, and August 14, 1945, during combat operations against Japan, the 20th Air Force, operating from the Marianas, lost 447 B-29 bombers and 824 crew members. Of these losses, 343 bombers were down during combat missions, representing 1.2% of all aircraft that took flight during that period. These losses underscore the immense challenges faced by these missions. Japanese anti-aircraft flak was responsible for 76% of all battle damage, while fighters accounted for 13%. Even self-inflicted damage contributed to this daunting toll. The B-29's role didn't end with World War II. By 1950, it was called back into service during the Korean War, flying over 21,000 sorties and nearly 167,000 tons of bombs dropped. Yet, the skies over Korea were no less forgiving. Soviet-made MiG-15 jets proved deadly adversaries. Officially, 34 B-29s were lost during the war, with 16 falling to enemy fighters. Among the many stories of loss, the crash of the B-29 Superfortress overexposed in 1948 remains particularly haunting. Designed as a reconnaissance aircraft, it was on a routine mission from RAF Scampton to Burton Wood Air Base, carrying 13 crew members and essential supplies, including U.S. Air Force wages. On November 3, 1948, the weather was grim. Low visibility, a cloud base under 2,000 feet. Captain Landon Tanner, navigating over the Peak District's treacherous terrain, may have relied on instruments that were compromised by a malfunctioning altimeter. Strong headwinds likely exacerbated the navigational error. Just 30 minutes after takeoff, tragedy struck. Overexposed collided with Bleaklow at 2,007 feet, killing all 13 men on board instantly. The wreckage, scattered across the moorland, was discovered by an RAF mountain rescue unit conducting a training exercise. The scene was a grim testament to the perils of aviation. Today, the crash site stands as a solemn memorial, where parts of the engines and landing gear remain untouched. Visitors pay respects to the crew who perished, with Captain Tanner's wedding ring, recovered decades later, serving as a poignant reminder of the human cost of such missions. The flaws of B-29. The B-29 Superfortress was a marvel of engineering, but this Sky Titan was built under immense pressure. often leading to critical flaws that put its crews in constant danger. As the Pacific War intensified, the urgency to deploy the B-29 Superfortress led to aircraft being rushed directly from factories to modification centers, bypassing extended testing phases. Each B-29 effectively became a prototype, continuously refined during active service. One of the aircraft's most perilous vulnerabilities was its engine design. In a bid to reduce weight, high manganese alloys were used, a decision with deadly consequences. If an engine caught fire, the manganese could self-combust at temperatures above 3,000 degrees Celsius or 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit, causing flames to spread rapidly. In mere seconds, the intense heat could melt through the aluminum wing spar, potentially leading to catastrophic failure mid-flight. In the Pacific, tropical heat made a bad situation worse. Engines overheated on the ground if idling for more than 20 minutes, forcing pilots to scramble into the air just to keep their planes cool. But even in flight, the climb to altitude was a delicate balancing act. Engine cooling flaps had to be perfectly adjusted. Too little cooling, and the engines would overheat. Too much, and the flaps acted like air brakes, making the planes nearly impossible to control. At altitude, the challenges didn't stop. Pilots faced an invisible foe, the jet stream. These powerful winds could slow a fully loaded B-29 to a crawl, turning them into sitting ducks for enemy fire and adding extra strain on the engines. Another problem with the B-29 was that it was loaded with over 12,000 pounds of bombs. The B-29 was a beast to get off the ground. The weight strained its engines to their limits, making takeoffs a risky maneuver, especially on short airstrips in remote locations. But even after takeoff, the challenges didn't stop. Flying a 3,000-mile round trip to Japan meant crossing vast expanses of hostile waters. Emergency landings were almost impossible. If an engine failed or fuel ran low, there was often nowhere to go but the ocean below. In June 1944, the aircraft's persistent overheating issues sent engineers at the Aircraft Engine Research Laboratory, now NASA Glenn, back to the drawing board. What they uncovered was shocking. Cylinder heads couldn't dissipate heat efficiently, exhaust valves were failing, and uneven fuel distribution caused backfires that ignited magnesium fires in the superchargers. The fixes were groundbreaking: redesigned cylinder heads, better airflow through baffles, and a new fuel injection system to prevent backfires. These changes boosted engine performance by 38%, adding 10,000 feet of altitude capability or the ability to carry 35,000 pounds more payload. The B-29 was finally living up to its promise. Though these modifications saved countless lives, the challenges never truly disappeared. Even with improvements, the average engine lasted just 265 hours before needing replacement. The B-29 Superfortress was a triumph of innovation born under pressure, but for the men who flew it, every mission was a test of skill, courage, and survival. The B-29 Superfortress was a technological marvel, but its legacy is marked by the terrifying toll it took on its crews. Designed to deliver devastating strikes, it faced critical flaws, including engine overheating and dangerous design issues, which put pilots and crew members in constant peril. Despite its advancements, the aircraft was plagued by mechanical failures, the stress of long missions, and the constant threat of enemy fire and weather. The B-29's role in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki cemented its place in history, but it also left crews with psychological scars. Between November 1944 and August 1945, 447 B-29s were lost, and countless lives were claimed in combat. Even after World War II, the B-29 continued to serve in the Korean War, where losses persisted. The B-29 Superfortress is a testament to innovation under pressure, but also to the unrelenting human cost of war. Thank you for joining us in exploring this terrifying side of the B-29 Superfortress. If this legendary bomber left you terrified as well, then don't forget to subscribe and come back for more history digs.